Hi everyone, well I'm back again to do another video for you. This time I'm going to show you how to make an anemone from a single cutter. It's a cutter that a lot of people tend to buy when they first buy cutters, so if you've got any Sugarcraft tools at all, you've probably got this in your box. If you haven't, then it's a useful cutter to make a lot of different flowers, so I'll go on with this. Right, as you can see, I've already got one anemone here that I've made here, and the cutter that I've used to make it is this cutter here. Now they come in various different makes, there's lots of different kinds. You can get metal cutters, but unfortunately the metal cutters don't cut right into the centre as we do here, so you'd have to use a pair of scissors if you've got a cutter like these here. With these you'd have to cut a bit further in with a small pair of scissors, so you need a pair of nail scissors in your arsenal if you're going to use these sort of cutters. This one is an Orchard Products cutter. I've also got some PME cutters as well that do the same. They do two sets which take you from a very small one up to a very large one, and if you look back on my videos you can see where I've done an all-in-one rose using this type of cutter. I think I used the PME cutter for that one. So anyway, back onto your flower. Right, so with anemones, with a lot of the darker ones, particularly the reds, blues and purples, the deep ones, they do tend to have a bit of white at the bottom of the petals, so I tend to use white paste to make these flowers. Now another little thing that I'm going to show you here while I'm on with this is paste has gone a bit crusty on the outside. Now with my students I get a lot of people complaining saying, oh my paste's hard, I can't use that. Well yes you can, as long as it's soft inside. Just give it a good squeeze like that, and the best thing you can do here, just got a bit of powder on there so we'll just get rid of that. Picked a bit of colour there. Is to crush your paste. So if you get your paste on your board, get your rolling pin and roll it out and crush all the dried bits in your paste. And then just re-knead it and that will come back to your soft paste. Right, so what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to show you how I've made the centre. Now I've used some bit of colour that I had left around to make the centre with this, but I'm just going to do it with white because I've got that in my hand now. So what I'm going to do is start off with a small ball of paste, and the best thing to do is if you flatten it to see how your centre is going to look, and then try it in the centre of your cutter. What we're doing with my cutter. Just to see how big it's going to be. That's fine, it just covers that hole in the centre there. Depends which kind of cutter you're using. If you're using the PME cutters, which are more open, then you need to sort of guess that bit, but you want it to basically come to the bottom of your petals there. So what you need now is you need a 20 gauge wire, which we use for all the flowers that are on a single stem, where we're not going to separately wire the petals. You can make anemones using separate petals, but this one I'm just using the all-in-one cutter to make it easier for you, because a lot of people tend to have those. And what you need to do is you need to make a loop on the top. So we're going to make the shepherd's crook like we've done before. I'm going to turn it right in like that and twist it round, and then just bend that over. This is where you need these little long nose pliers, so for any of you ladies who've got a husband that's into DIY or anything like that, or any of the male people that are doing flowers, then get a pair out that you haven't used for anything else. Right, so what you need to do first of all is, if you put your ball of paste on your board, and what we're going to do is put a bit of glue on the wire first of all, with some flour pastes, they're not as sticky as others. This one is quite sticky, but just to be on the safe side, to make sure it stays put, and put some glue on it, and then pop that into the centre of your paste like that, and then bring the paste over the top of the hook like that, so that that's sealed underneath. For those that haven't watched me before, if I go off camera, it's because I don't have a camera person to watch me here. So right, so what you need to do is to pop that to one side to dry. I've already got one that's dry here. So the next step we need to do, I'm just going to cover my paste up until I've done this, because otherwise it dries out very quickly. So remember to keep your paste covered. I have got some pollen that I've made here. I'm just going to get a bit of kitchen roll, because I have a habit of spilling things all over the place, and the last thing you want to do is to get colour on your board, because if it gets into your white paste then it spoils what you're doing. Now if you go back to some of my other videos where I've made the pollen, it shows you how to make that. I think I did it in my last one. What did I do in the last one? Oh, the chrysanthemums. So I've cut that wire into a third. I've got one wire in a third, and I've got my centre on it. So what I'm going to do is get your glue now, and don't go all over with your glue. You only want to be on top. So we're just going to go around the side like that. Make sure you get it all the way around, because if you miss anywhere it becomes difficult. If you get a great dry spot, the pollen isn't going to stick to it. So then that goes into your pollen like that. So there, oops, we missed a bit in the middle. I have missed a bit, look. That's what happens if you don't get it all over. I'll just try and get some glue in there without getting that many glue. There we are, I've done it. Right, now the colour that I've used in here, I can't remember, it's a long time ago since I made this batch of pollen up, but as far as I can recollect, it was, I think it was blackberry from Squire's Kitchen, which their black is not a black, it's sort of more of a grey colour, and I have added a sort of very bit of a dark bluey in it. But if you've got a black, you can add a bit of blue into it to make it that sort of grey colour, or even try it with a little bit of white just to see how it is. Just have to play about with it until you get it to the colour you want it to be. Right, so the next thing you need to do is you need to make up some stamens. Now if you go back to my other videos, you'll find that I've already made these cotton stamens up in the past, so I'm not going to go through that again, because you can go back to my other videos and see how I did that. And what you need to do is to trim your stamens to get them as near as damn it even at the top. Those aren't even, so if you just get it between your fingers and pretend that you're a hairdresser, get a pair of nail scissors and just cut off the top bits like that, and just roll it round till you get all the bits off. See, it's not totally even, isn't that? But it doesn't matter, because as we keep saying, nothing is perfect in nature. There's always variation, so don't worry about it if it's not too precise. Just don't want too many straggly bits sticking up. It's not perfect, but that'll do. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do with that is now, because I want to stiffen these stamens, so if you get some hair lacquer, this one is Ultra Strong Hold from Super Soft, and spray, I'm not doing it under camera, but I'm trying not to get it all over the place. Spray all over your cotton like that. Then if you just get the end of my scissors, and we'll just get those in and just spread it out a little bit. Try and fan it out a little bit if you can. Ready to go around the I'm going to be gassed out here in a bit because I'm in a confined space, and you shouldn't really be using hair lacquer and things like that in a confined space because of the gas in your can, so just be careful of that. I once did a demonstration, ended up with half of my audience coughing the heads off because I've been spraying too much lacquer about, you know, but there we are. Hazard had the game. If anybody's watching that was at one of those demonstrations, I apologise. Spread them out a little bit. Now you could put 4 in if you wanted to. I have got another one here. Be a bit generous with the stamens. What I've done is I've wound this round all my fingers about 25 times. As I say, if you go back to my other videos, you'll see how I made the stamens in there as well. Right, so once you've done that, get your centre. You need some stem text. I've cut this into half width tape, which is what I generally use for a lot of things. Stretch your tape, find out which is the sticky side, which is that side. Wrap that round like that, and then roll between your finger and thumb and stretch with the other hand and push that up right underneath there like that. Just going to get that down out of the way, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some glue round the base of the centre now, because I want some of those stamens to stick to the underside of that. So then get your stamens. I'm just going to tilt my camera up a little bit here. There we are, so you can see, just in case I go out of shot, because it's a bit easier for me to do this way. So get your wire right up to the underneath the centre and go around with your tape. Get your first one in and then put another one in. Depends how full you want your stamens to be, and it's the same if you're doing poppies as well. The same method for doing poppies. That didn't want to go underneath there. Hang on. Stuck it in. Get underneath there. My wire's turning when I don't want it to turn. Oops. There we are. Get that under there. Right up. It's a lot easier when you get more in. Sometimes you have a little bit of difficulty with the first ones. That's it. That's in place. Then another one. See how we go. We might get away with doing 3 in here. Yeah, I think we will. Yeah. Right, and tape down. And then if you get your something with the sharp end, your scissors or whatever else you're going to use, and then just pull your stamens out underneath just to even them out, like that. As I say, if you were doing poppies, you'd use the same method of this to put your stamens on. I make my stamens exactly the same way for a poppy because they have black. The cotton I've used here, it's actually dark blue, it's not black, because I couldn't find my black cotton. So we've got those round there. They're not all exactly the same length, so I'm just going to take a little bit off of these here, so they're a bit too long. Better. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just catch the edge of the stamens with a bit of glue. You could spray your hair lacquer on as well, but that's going to go all over the centre of your flower as well when you do that, so I tend to prefer to just catch the edge with some glue. We don't want to use too much of anything artificial if you're going to put it on a cake. Right, so once you've done that, back into your pollen and just dip your stamens into the pollen going round like that. There we are. So you've got the pollen on top of your stamen, so we're just going to put that to one side to dry now. Get rid of these bits and pieces out of the way. whilst I'm doing this, don't forget to subscribe, and if you press the bell at the bottom, you'll be notified when I upload any new videos. And as I say, I'll try and do one a week if I can, because I have to practice in between and do my little blue pizza bit as well. For anybody that's not in the UK, that's a programme for children where they make models and stuff like that, and they have all the bits and pieces ready. Right, so the next step now is to do your petals. Now when you're going to do your petals for anything like this, where you're doing the flower all in one, unlike separate petals, we need to have something at the back of the flower to strengthen it here, because all your petals are going to be attached to that, and if you don't, then your petals will just break off. Although the back of the flower is quite flat, we need something to support the flower there. So just going to get some white fat on my hand and onto my board. Now I'm only going to use about half of that paste there. So first of all, start off by rolling a ball of paste. Then between your finger and your thumb on both hands, go around the paste, squashing out the outside, leaving this little bobble bit in the middle. You don't need that to be too big, but you've got to have something to attach the petals to. This is where you need the right equipment. If you haven't got a cell stick, which is one of these, this is I get the smallest ones from Cellcrafts. Mine's going blank again. I buy the small set. This comes with this and a smaller one in it, rather than buying them separately, because it's cheaper to buy it in a set. This is how I get them for my students, but they're the only ones out of the cell sticks that I use. They're very useful, of these. If you haven't got that, then probably if you've got some dowel or something like that, then that would do. It's probably a little bit thick is the dowel for this job, but it's better than, because you can't use a normal rolling pin, because you can't get right up to there. Right, so we start to roll the paste out, going all the way around. Now you need to check at some point that the hole in the centre of this one, it doesn't matter so much with the PME ones because they're more open, but you need to make sure that that's going to go over that. So that's a bit big, so I'm going to go right into it. This is why you need a small rolling pin. You need to get right into the centre to bring that down and make that smaller and roll that out. Quite a lot of flowers that we make are made like this, where you're using cutters to cut out the petals rather than the ones that you cut out without using cutters. That's better. Right, so we'll cut that out. Make sure you give it a good press all the way around and get a nice clean cut. Take that off. Take your excess paste away. Just get rid of that, so we don't need that anymore. And now we'll get that off of the board and onto your pad. Another essential tool for those that haven't watched me before. They're not expensive, aren't these, but this is a PME one, which I think they're about £2.25, £2.50 something. It depends on where you buy it from. And then what we're going to do is we're going to thin the edge of the petals. Just be careful you don't get your petals stuck together. If you've already done one and you're having difficulty getting in, if you just lift that up and go around it, and you can do the same with that one, just to make sure that they don't get stuck together, because you need to keep those separated. Now if you wanted to make a double anemone, a simple one, then you could actually do another set of petals without the back on it, just a flat pair, and you just put those in so they go over the joints, so they go one petal there, one petal there, one petal there, and one petal there, and so on. On the normal single ones, there are actually 5 petals on a lot of them, but it's best to check the variety you're doing if you're going to make a specific type of anemone. Now the next thing I need to do is to put some veining into the petals, so I'm going to have to do this on my hands, because if you try and do it on the pad it won't work. So into the centre and roll out in a fan motion like that on each of the petals. This is just to give a bit more definition. This is what makes them look a bit more realistic. Although it's not specifically botanically correct, it makes it look more like a flower to people that are just looking at it as a sugar flower and say, oh, that looks real. That's the effect that you want from people when you're doing this sort of thing. That's what they're paying for. That's why we charge so much for them. Right, the next thing we're going to do is get it on the edge of my flower finger, and I'm going to go around the edge with the point up in the air, and I'm just going to go around again, going in the same, keeping your veining going in the same direction. I'm just giving a bit of movement to the edge of the petals so they're not flat. Even though we thin the edges, they just look a little bit better if they're not, because anything that looks flat never looks lifelike. So you need to add that little bit extra to it, but just be careful you don't go in like that, because you'll end up with a ridge down on the petals that'll be seen, so you don't want that. Just keep it right on your bone, so the bone, it does make your fingers a bit sore, so I'm warning you. So just change fingers if it's getting a bit raw, just go on to another one. Right, so once you've done that, then the next step is to put that onto your centre. So if you get your centre and put some glue round the base underneath your stamens like that, so that your flower stays attached. Twist the wire into the paste and pull that down. You just need to watch it at the top, because you've got these petals wire, this quite thick at the top. This is another reason why you need that blip at the back, because otherwise your paste will tear. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do now is I need to support it now while it dries. So I've got one of these, we'll use a clean one. These are also from Cellcrafts. If you haven't got some of these, just shape some foil or something like that, or if you've got an egg tray, sorry, not an egg tray, an apple tray or something like that, go to your greengrocer, get one of those. An apple tray will be fine. Make a hole in the centre, pull your flower down into the centre, and I'm just going to get something to lift up my petals so that that drops in. So you don't want those curling under like that. Pull that down into the centre, just go underneath and just lift your petals up. There we are. So then what I've got here is a pop bottle. Drop that into a pop bottle with your former on the top and the wire hanging down, because otherwise sometimes if you've got too big a hole your former can drop down. So I'll put that to one side to dry. Right, the next thing is leaves. Now this is a little bit more complicated. It doesn't, with these particular leaves, I'm not using cutters for them. These are actually anemone leaf veiners. If you can get hold of these come in a set of 2. Now, unlike the leaves that I've made in the past with any of my videos, what you need to do is to, I'm just going to have to make some more paste up. Need some more green. The colour that I use for my green paste when I'm doing anything like this is I use Christmas green from Sugar Flare. If you've got Squire's Kitchen paste, then it's Christmas green. Don't use the Christmas green from Sugar Flare, it's too blue. I only use one green for all my paste. I'm just trying to find where I put it, because I didn't get that out ready for my oh, here we are. So this is the Christmas green. It's the same, they call it sage green for Conde, whatever that is. Oh no, this is the PME one. I'm not over keen on this one. I'd forgotten I got this one, but it's okay colour wise. I just find it's a bit too runny. We'll just use a tiny bit of that. This is very similar sort of green if you're using PME colours. It's a little bit bluer, is this. I'm not over keen on it really, but I'm going to mix it in with here. Like I said before, when you're making leaves and things like that, or anything that you're colouring, petals or whatever, then you want a paler colour of the colour that you're going to do, paler version, because you're going to dust your colour on. The powder colours are a lot cheaper, depending on who you buy from. People that have watched my videos before know that I use edible art colours, and they're really cheap. I think a pot of the plain colours, if I remember rightly, I think these are about £1.20 a pot. You go to some makes and they charge a hell of a lot more than that, I'm afraid, and I think that is vastly overpriced for the amount of time you're going to use it. They're very good, family business, and they do a massive range of colours as well, much bigger than a lot of firms do. So I've stuck with those. I used to use Squire's Kitchen, but they're quite pricey, theirs, and they keep going up, so I've stopped using those. And for the sake of doing these videos, if I can find a cheaper way of doing it for you when you're just starting, then better. If you can afford to buy all the expensive equipment and that's fine. So between you and me, I got these from China. So I didn't pay a lot of money for them. It's just the amount of time you've got to wait for them coming that's the problem. I'm just going to do one of these leaves just to show you how I did it. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm not using the groove side of the board. You can use the groove side of this if you're going to do that, but as you've seen in my videos, for speed I use my trusty ridged rolling pin. Right, so we'll go up the centre. So I just want a ridge to get a wire in. Now when you're doing it this way, you're going to have to use the vernier that you're going to use to get the shape and size. So what I'm going to do is just pop that on top of there so I don't get rid of the ridge, and then with your cutting wheel, another useful piece of equipment, cut out round the leaf. I'm not cutting it to sizes yet because I just basically want the size that I want of paste. Pop that away, make sure you put it away so it doesn't dry out. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the wire in. So I've got a wire here. This is a 26 gauge wire because it's a bit bigger than some of the leaves that I've done, and it's quite wide and heavy, so I'm putting a slightly bigger wire. Usually I use a 28 for most leaves, unless I'm doing ivy or something like that where I'll use a 32 gauge wire or a 30 gauge wire. Get your wire up as far as you can, but not too far so that it comes out at the end when you've cut your piece out. So what I need to do now is, if you just get your leaf and just press on it so you get an impression round the edge of your leaf like that. I don't know whether you can see that on camera, probably very slightly. It's very difficult for me to see down here what you can see. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use my little scissors here, and I'm going to cut out round the shape. I'll try and do this as quickly as I can, so I'm not cutting it out quite as neat as I would normally do. I did when I did the other ones that I've already made. I did spend quite a bit of time doing this, and I don't want to bore you to death by spending hours and hours just cutting out one leaf, otherwise you'll be falling asleep. And I'm sure some of my students might be watching this, ex-students, because I can't see what I've done on the top there. If you're having difficulty with that, another way of doing it is, if I've already got that part done, so I'm going to put this into here. If you put your leaf into your vernier like that. We are. And then put the other piece on top. You need to be very careful if you're doing this. This is where it's probably better for you to buy the veiner rather than it is to buy the cutters and the veiners. If you can get them both together, fine, but there isn't. It's too complicated, this, and it'd be quite pricey. So if you get it in there, then what you can do is you can go in and cut out your little pieces. Just make sure you don't cut your veiner. And I've gone a little bit off piece there. There we are. It's better. Because also while I'm doing this, then I'm also veining it at the same time because I'm pressing it together. With it being such a complicated thing, you know, the reason some things are expensive is because the amount of work that goes into making them. And as you can see by the amount of detail that there is in this leaf, I know if I asked my lady that I buy my veiners from to make me some of these, she'd probably bite my head off, because she wouldn't want to do this one, believe me. There are some cutters that she doesn't like doing, I do know. I mean, she will make them, that's not a problem, but I think it's like any job. You need to enjoy what you're doing to make a good job of it, you know. The more you enjoy it, the better the job you'll make. Right, I've got most of it off there. Just get rid of those bits out. Give it a really good press. Now what you can do is you could go around the edge and just take a little bit more off, just so it fits inside your veiner, and then thin your edges, and then go back into your veiner again, just to give it another press. And then take your leaf out and then put it to dry on your pad, and then you've got your leaves already dried, shaped. So if you use this bobble foam like I've got here, I use it for nearly everything. You can shape almost anything. No good for petals unless you're doing small flowers like these little flowers with the plunger things that are unwired. I might do a class later on actually doing those and showing you how to wire them and put them in sprays to make filler flowers as well. That's another thing. As I've said before, if you've got any suggestions about anything you'd like to see me make, then please put them in the comments section below, and I'll try and do anything that you can. So I've already got some of these made, and that's the one I just made, and I've got some coloured. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to colour these ones that are already dry. Just got one of each that I've made. Now what I've done here is, again, I'm using the edible art colours. I've used some ginkgo, which I tend to use a lot of, which is a mid-green, but I've also mixed some rainforest with it, which is a much darker one. So that's the colour of the ginkgo. And where's my rainforest gone? Hiding behind that bottle probably, somewhere. There it is. Yeah, rainforest, which is this one, which is much darker. And I've mixed some of the rainforest in to make the ginkgo a little bit darker, because I needed that sort of green to colour my leaves. And then onto your brush and off your brush, and then brush all over the front of your leaves. I'm not doing any shading on these because they are just green of these leaves on these, and then over the back with a bit of a lighter one. You don't always have to put any dust. I have put a bit of dust on there because it didn't have enough on, but normally I would just brush over the back of the leaf without putting any more colour on my brush, because you just need to make it just that little bit of colour, but not as dark as the front. The backs of leaves generally are a lot lighter colour. That hasn't got enough colour on it, so we'll put a bit of colour on the brush just and I've just broken a bit off of that one there, but you can't tell with these because there's such a haphazard finish on them that you can't tell. You didn't see that. My little joke. Right, so the next step is now I'm going to varnish those. Don't use a decent brush for doing this. Use any cheap paintbrush that you can find for this sort of job. We don't use decent brushes for varnishing. That's when I go in there. Now I might have to put some in the lid for that. That's a little bit big for putting in my jar. I don't want to put too much on here because they're not as shiny as some leaves are, so I'm being a little bit sparing with the colour on here. Oops. Try not to get your green all over the place. I've just spilt some there. The reason I'm doing them now before I start colouring the flower is because although it dries fairly quickly, it won't be quite dry enough for me to put together straight away, so I'm going to do this first. They'll be dry enough then to put together when I come round to do it. We only do the front. I've done 3 of those. I don't know whether I'll need all these 3, but I've got them just in case. Right, so I'll get rid of that because we don't need that now. I'm just going to pop those leaves to one side to dry. On the side there. Now then, the other anemone I did in a pink, so it shows up more on camera, I'm going to use a purple for this, and the purple I'm using again is Edible Art, and it's one called Empress Purple, which I think is the darker one. There's a couple of different ones. There's Empress Purple and I can't remember what the other one is, and there's also lilacs and all sorts. Like, there's lots of different various ranges in their colour range. And they are natural pigments that they use as well. They don't mix them like a lot of people do, so you get a better colour. So start from the edge, dusting in all the way around the edge of each of the petals. Just leaving a little bit of white just at the base of the petals. These come in shades of purples, blues, reds and pinks and whites. Do anemones. Those are the general colours that you get. I'm not saying there aren't any new varieties now. There might be. I haven't looked recently, but generally those are the colours you get in anemones. It's one of the flowers where you get more of the bluey colours than you do in a lot of them. Right, so once I've done the front, then I'm just going to turn it over and do the back. Just be very careful because there's no support for these petals, so be very gentle and take your time doing it. Just a gentle bit of colour, and then you can go over it again just to add a bit more, just to get a stronger colour. I'm not going to do it now, but when you finish your flowers, then just steam them in the kettle steam. I have got a steamer for doing it, but I haven't got it out at the moment, so I'm not going to steam them. But you need to do that to set your colour anyway, to make sure it doesn't rub off when you're handling them, putting them into sprays or whatever you're going to do with them. Right, and then on the back here, they don't have a calyx as such, but unfortunately most of the pictures that I found, and I haven't got any in the garden, I couldn't find any pictures of the backs of the anemones, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to dust the back when I find my green brush. There it is. Back into the green again, and I'm just going to go around the base of that, just to give it a bit of colour. There we are. So that's that done. Right, tape. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, directly underneath the flower, I'm going to tape in these smaller leaves. They do have a sort of a calyxy type thing, but they're sort of more like these leafy type things. So I'm going to put these underneath the flower. I'm going to tape 3 of those into there, like that. Make sure you get them right down to the wire so they don't move around, because if they waggle around it's because you haven't got them in tight. Just get your wires and pull your wires down so that they're really tight down to the tape. There we are, and they'll stay put then wherever you put them. I'm just going to tape down. I don't know whether I went out of shot there, but I apologise if I did. So that's that part, and then lower down I'm going to add in a couple of the other leaves. Usually if you put them into a spray, we don't bother putting the leaves in. You can put the leaves into the spray, but not necessarily on the flower like I'm doing here. This is just as if you're going to use oops, broken that one, so we can't put another leaf in there. Like I said before, for anybody that's watching the first time, if anything goes wrong, I don't edit it out, because it happens to the best of us. So there we are, an anemone with some leaves in it. That's another colour in the anemone, just to give you an idea. And you need a really strong red if you're going to do the red ones. You could actually, although they are white at the bottom of the petal, it's a bit difficult. This is why I always do them in white first before I colour them. But if you can get hold of some extra strength dust, Sugarflare do some stronger ones that are not edible, and they do a red one in those. So they're used more for porcelain and things like that. But as long as nobody's going to eat it, then you could use that. So we'll just pop those back on there. So those are the anemones that I've made, and hope you enjoyed that. And as I said before, if you've got any comments about anything you'd like to see, or any questions about the demonstration, then please leave your comments below. Bang on the bell to find out when I'm going to upload another video, and please subscribe and come back and see what else I'm going to do. So see you in the next video. Take care, stay safe, and goodbye.